So what did Stalin, Mao, and Hitler all have in common? The answer might surprise you. All right, here we are, new year, and I'm wishing everybody a happy new year. We have people in varying degrees of how they think this 2024 is going to pan out. A lot of the prognosticators of doom out there are going full force, and sadly, I think a lot of them are likely to be correct. And then we have the other end of that coin where people are thinking that if we just get the right person in the right office, that it'll just magically turn everything around. Let me go back to Stalin, Mao, and Hitler. Well, yeah, they were guys, but what people tend to forget is that they were just part of a larger apparatus called government that engaged in this thing called democide. Never heard about it? Well, in a nutshell, it's funny how the definition of democide has changed over the last several years, but in a nutshell, democide is really murder by government. And that's it in a nutshell. Now, like I said, there might be likely some different definitions these days. It's funny how the definition of everything seems to be turned on its head. Like I said, all those guys were in power, but they had an entire apparatus called government that made it all possible. So why on earth would anybody, any thinking person that knows anything about history, rely on government to solve whatever the problems are? No, the solutions to those problems lie in you, it lies in me, and most of all, they lie in the Lord. So before I tell you to do anything or encourage you to do anything, first of all, get your life right with the Almighty first and foremost. Because if your soul's prepared, then really nothing else matters. At least that's how I think. Let's talk about this democide. So let's talk about the one that everybody pretty much knows about, and that's going to be the one that officially is from 1941 to 45. That would have been Hitler. And like I said, it wasn't just Hitler. It was a whole apparatus of people that were working with him. And once again, they were called government. You could even argue that it probably went all the way back to 1938, maybe even 39. But anyway, so we're told 6 million died as a result of that. Well, let's back it on up a little bit. Let's talk about World War I, where we don't even know how many died, but we'll just say for good numbers, we'll say 20 million. But what's another million? Anyway, all of that, depending on whose story you believe of World War I, all was a result of government. Let me give you some other examples. How about the Holodomor, that thing that Stalin engaged in? It's funny how everybody talks about the Holocaust, but nobody talks about the Holodomor. Stalin, that butcher, killed 8 million people alone in the Ukraine. In fact, we don't even know how many people that dude killed, but it was an awful lot. And who did they kill? The dissidents, the people that weren't on board, what some people would call probably the malcontents out there. And like I said, we don't even know the full number. What about Chairman Mao? I would encourage you to go out there and look and see who really put him in power. There was a guy before him that was probably going to be a halfway decent dude in terms of leaders, but Chairman Mao, the hero of people like Hillary Clinton and a number of others out there, and probably a hero of a number of the people on the right that nobody ever talks about. But I digress. Okay, conservative numbers say anywhere between, dig this, 60 to 100 million. They don't even know. I've heard the estimates as high as 121 million people that were murdered, mostly through starvation. A lot of maybe you took a play out of Stalin's book, most of that was done through starvation. And people consider this dude a champion. He didn't do it himself. Neither did Stalin and Hitler. It was all done through government. Democide. Like I said, new word for the new year. How about the Khmer Rouge? They're the same people that put Mao in that had a whole lot to do with that. Were the same people that put in Pol Pot in Cambodia. The dude, depending on what numbers you look at, somewhere between 1.7 to 2 million people that he killed. Well, you're like, well, that's not nearly as much. Well, when you look at it in terms of his whole population, the dude murdered a third of his people. None of the previous people I talked about murdered a third, but yes, he murdered a third of his people, and it was through that government. Democide. How about Rwanda? We don't really talk about that one much. And what was it, about 1 million people that were murdered? I want to say 94. 1 million people were murdered in Rwanda. And that happened in months. There's some seedy reasons as to why and how that all panned about, but that's a conspiratorial thing that I'll probably have to save for the podcast. All right, how about the Armenian genocide? 1.5 million people murdered there. Shall I continue? How about the people that were murdered in Indonesia? The whole East Timor thing. Millions killed there. Oh, let's not forget about the Ethiopian Red Terror. Once again, millions. How about the murders in Bangladesh? What about North Korea? How about all those others? But a lot of people out there are thinking, well, those are foreign countries. They're uncivilized. That would never happen here. If you don't think genocide happened, well, ask yourself what happened to all the native people that were on this country. So you think that wouldn't happen, or that's ancient history? What do you think the Trail of Tears was? So they called them the 5 civilized tribes because they bust them up. Well, they didn't bust them out. They basically walked them out, killed I don't even know how many on the run. The Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Creek, and Seminole. Put them on BMWs, and I meant boots meant for walking, and most of them didn't have shoes. Murdered right on the way. Think that wouldn't happen here? Oh, but that was long ago. That wouldn't happen in our current civilized society. Well, let's look at what we've done to veterans in this country. How about MK Ultra? You know how many people they used in that were soldiers? How many people that were in hospitals and that were incarcerated? That all these people that they used in Project MK Ultra, people like Jolly and West that were considered respected doctors. Yeah. So MD doesn't necessarily stand for medical deity. For me, in these guys' case, it usually stands for mighty deadly. What about the mustard gas experiments that were used in World War II? You know how many soldiers and sailors were killed on that one? And then they even tried to say, well, they were given disclosure. Really? You're going to tell me? Now, I know there's some dumb soldiers out there. I've served with a lot of them. But there ain't one of them that would say, okay, you're probably going to die when we hit you with this mustard gas, but maybe we'll give you $100 to make everything all right. Oh, it didn't? My bad. How about Project Shad? Never heard about that one, right? Happened all through the 60s, all through the 70s. And basically, they knowingly shot these Joes, mostly, as I remember, mostly Navy personnel that they shot up with nuclear radiation just to see what would happen. Oh, let's not forget about one of the favorites out there. How about Agent Orange? They knew the people that were responsible for that basically are the same people that make our food right now. Yeah, I probably can't bring their names up, but it's not hard to find. Agent Orange. They knew that it would not only murder a bunch of Vietnamese over there, but also our own troops. See, we only talk about the 58,000 that died in Vietnam, but nobody ever talks about the casualties that were murdered over there but didn't die till a few years later when they got back. Many of them still dying. They knew full well what that stuff would do. Maybe your new resolution for 2024 ought to be no reliance on government. Be a little bit more independent. Grow more of your own food. Get yourself hooked up with a network out there of people that are doing good things. Maybe rely on those people, but above all else, rely on the Almighty. Look, I know this isn't necessarily the most encouraging thing to hear in the new year, but I keep hearing it over and over and over again. People thinking that government is your answer. Like I said, this is just a short list of the reasons why they aren't and why historically they haven't been. If you need anything from us, go check out the website. Till next time, this is Billy from Perma Pastures Farm, wishing you a happy new year. We'll see you next time.